You know, a freshman in medical school is a lost and frightened soul. Now, this is due to a lot of reasons, I suppose. He's heard how very difficult med school is. You know, you drop your pencil and you flunk out. And then there's all this rigmarole and red tape which is necessary to get in. That's enough to frighten anybody. You know, the interviews. Boy, why do you want to be a doctor? I hate money and I like to help people. You like girls? Yes, I like to help them too. What kind of doctor you want to be, boy? I'd like to be a general practitioner in a small town in this state and refer all of my interesting cases to this hospital. Then he goes on to tell you, about how they're swamped with applications and maybe they can take something like 1 out of 4. You go out wondering who those other 3 guys might be, another C.H. Best or a Harvey Cushing. But somehow, you luck out, you make it, you get that letter of acceptance, and you're overjoyed. They believe that stuff about hating money and loving people. Then comes the first day in class. The dean makes his little welcoming speech. Boys, take a look at the fellow in the seat beside you. At graduation time, one of you won't be here. And you see out of the corner of your eye, the fellow on your right and on your left, they're both looking at you. Then he goes on to say, it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of long hours, but remember, if you ever need me, I'll always be here to help you out. Well, he was as good as his word. I had to go to see him after our first quarter, and he told me he'd like to help me out, clean out. See, the reason I had to go to see him was because, we'd gotten our grades, and I made 2 F's and a D. He wanted to know, what was the trouble. I told him I wasn't sure, but I thought I was putting too much time on one subject. But I did better in the second quarter. I only had to go to see him 1 time. And this time he really did help me. See, we were running this experiment in biochemistry lab, and in this experiment we had to use some burnt cork. And so they gave us all a cork, and we were burning them. And, I lost mine, and I got sent to the dean, and he burnt me a new one. Speaking of biochemistry lab, I was a senior before I learned those micro-Caldol things weren't supposed to blow up. But gross anatomy lab was different. Nobody blew up in there but the professor. Gross lab, the first couple of times you went, after you came out, you had to wash your hands at least 5 or 6 times before you ate, and then you were careful what not to think about, nerve, muscle. It kind of puts a drumstick in a different light. A lot of the boys in our class were from out in the country or from very small towns. We had one fellow I lived in the dorm with. Sam was his name. And Sam was really from the sticks. I know because, like I say, I lived in the dorm with him, and he used to keep a Sears and Roebuck catalog in the bathroom. Or maybe it was that he was such a Southerner he hated anything Northern. But at any rate, Sam had a younger brother, and this younger brother, while we were freshmen, came up and visited with us a few days. He kind of halfway had it in mind that he too might someday want to be a doctor, and he wanted to get a look at the place and see what the school was really like. And after he'd been here a few days, he wrote a letter to his mother. And I shouldn't have done it, but I just happened to have read this letter, and I made a copy of it, which I brought along today, and I'd like to read it to you. Dear Ma, I don't know if I want to be a doctor or not. It might not be so bad after you got out and started shooting penicillin and raking in all that money, but I don't think I could take 4 years of this schooling. In those letters from Sam, he's been saying all along how hard it was and that you had to study so much you didn't have time to ever go out at night or date or anything. Well, Ma, he won't kiddin'. I hadn't much believed it till I got up here and found out that the female cadavers are kept locked up at night. Ma, have you ever heard that oranges and cider go good together? I hadn't, but they must, because for the past couple of days, all the boys in the freshman class have been eating oranges by the crateful, and they keep a jug of cider with them all the time. One of the fellows let me have a swig, and when I told him it won't like the cider we make back home, he just laughed and said something about I ought to ask one of the other fellows named Charlie, who was a diabetic. Ma, I got a real shock last night. I was walking outside the dormitory here where all the med students stay, and I happened to glance in a couple of the windows, and I saw some things going on in there that were just awful. The next day when I told Sam, he laughed and said it was just some of the second-year boys learning how to do physicals on one another, but I still ain't too sure. Last Saturday night, Sam's medical fraternity had a party, and he took me. I don't want to upset you, Mom, but that party made the pool hall back home seem like a convention of the AA. Sam said the fellows were just ventilating their suppressed aggressions. That might be true, but they sure got me walking drunk along with it. While we were eating, one of the girls had to be taken to the hospital. Seems like somebody put an earlobe in her plate. Well, Ma, I'd better close now. Sam has been over in one of the other boys' rooms playing a little cards. He just came in and said, tell you to tell Daddy to send him some more money because he needs to buy some very expensive books. See you in a few days. Your loving son, Jake.